After stopping operations in Oella in March of '72, the Dickey Company sold the mill and its machinery to the McKittrick Company in Massachusetts. Dickey could not find an acceptable offer for the village, which is all just one unsubdivided tract. So I said, well, I'll take a crack at it with the houses and the former church community hall and about 76 acres. And they agreed to the sale and took back a mortgage. I've been asked, well, what did you plan to do with the place? What was your objective? I mean, how are you going to deal with this thing? So first, I guess the first thing I had to do, I had to organize and subdivide the land into lots. I formed the Oella Company and went to work with architects, engineers, land planners, lawyers, and Baltimore County officials. Land planner Gary Moll unraveled the puzzle of this challenging site. He divided the village and the land into 8 different sections to absorb the 242 units to which zoning entitled us. As to the attorneys and civil engineers, they repeatedly had to go before the zoning board to seek variances so each individual home could have its own lot. And why did you need variances? Because it's against the law to build buildings or houses right on a sidewalk, right on the road. And that's what Long Brick Road's all about, and some other areas there in Oella. Our attorneys also had to set up our homeowners association and then create the architectural controls that run with the covenants on the land. Okay, my first objective was historic preservation as we undertook the regeneration of the housing. I wanted to preserve the architectural integrity of the streetscape. As part of this objective was my desire to preserve the history and culture of the Mill Village. We are still periodically doing oral history interviews. Many are transcribed, some are accompanied with photographs. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes here to tell you a little bit about what we learned from these interviews. People lived, worked, and played in the village. They bought their necessities at the company store, which doubled as a post office. Merchandise included not only groceries, but also some fuel and soft goods, such as shoes, work clothes, and underwear. Milk was often bought from those neighbors who had cows and carried home in a bucket. Flour sacks served another purpose, as mothers sewed them into underwear for their children. On a summer day, boys plunged into the river with the name of a flour company emblazoned on their backs. The people of Oella practiced energy conservation and recycling in a day when the terms were unrecognized. My second objective was sensitive infill development. We planned smart growth before that term entered into the lexicon of planners. Most of our allotted units were clustered, preserving open space and wooded hills. We provided for a trail system. As to my third objective, which was a social objective, we wanted to make it possible for long-term tenants to continue to live here at rents affordable to them and improved housing with indoor plumbing. In June of 1972, the greatest flood in the history of Maryland and some people may argue that maybe 1868 was even worse in many respects. Anyhow, Tropical Storm Agnes swept down the valley, destroying operations at C.R. Daniels, doing extensive damage in the Ellicott City area, and some in Oella, which lost 3 houses. It severely damaged the mill race. Raw storage that had been carried by that mill race stagnated because water no longer flowed. The health department refused to allow pipes to be laid to carry the effluent down to the river. It appeared to me that Baltimore County was going to have to condemn the old mill town or bring in water and sewer. The prospect caused many county officials to shudder. For decades, they have been shying away from handling the problem of the need for indoor plumbing in Oella. There were a number of government officials visiting Oella. I took them behind this long brick row of 19 brick houses, where by just coincidence, there was a truck pumping sewage out of the outhouse pits. Something happened to that hose. It malfunctioned. My wife says that's a term I should use, malfunction. And it sprayed sewage over the trees. It was a very hot, humid day, and the stench was unbelievable. I was quite embarrassed, but nothing could have been more effective in convincing these officials that there was a great need for public water and sewer in Oella. The health department agreed and gave the area AA priority for water and sewer, and Oella Community Association was formed, and we did some interesting things which helped the morale of the community. We had a 1976 parade, and meanwhile, Murphy Williams had been contracted to do a master plan for Ellicott City. We urged Baltimore County to engage the same firm to do a comprehensive plan for Oella. In 1976, it was completed. In July of 1982, ground was broken for water and sewer and storm drainage. Completed in '84, rehabilitation of the mill housing got underway at once. Friends of Patapsco Valley, a nonprofit, was created in 1980 to work on the implementation of the Oella plan and also to push forward on the master plan for the Patapsco Valley Park. The county and I signed an agreement of intent that outlined our mutual obligations and joint efforts to improve the quality of life in the village and provide low-interest financing for hooking up to water and public sewer. When I bought the village, the rent was low and the amenities few. There was a Raleigh Shiflett who lived in a hollow in the woods, and it was the closest thing to looking like Appalachia I've ever seen in this part of the world. He paid $40 a month for his house and the same amount for his estranged wife who lived next door. His rough old house, believe it or not, turned into a Cinderella charmer. We extended the modest log cabin to the rear, stepping up a small ravine, and in so doing, created ground level entrances on 3 levels, plus a master bedroom level above with a cathedral ceiling and balcony. We took pride in that building that set a new standard for Oella. In 1990, it was named Spring Promise and became the historic Ellicott City Show House for the year. And then we indulged in a little bit of whimsy. We created what we called the world's smallest real estate office in the jazzed-up outhouse. There is another remarkable house in the heart of Oella. Oella Avenue wraps around 3 sides of it. One front side has 2 apartments, each with its own private entrance at ground level and each with 3 floors. The other side is on the other side of the building and has a floor below the apartments. Excavation inside the building was like an archaeological exploration and uncovered many interesting items. When we cut into the sheetrock on the west side of the building, we found a brick fireplace to heat the room. That was not unusual for a house built in 1809. But we noticed something very unusual that led us to rip out the brick fireplace. And what did we find, to our great surprise, was a handsome, large stone fireplace that was doubtlessly used as a cooking fireplace. I will now just show you a couple pictures of the evolution of Spring Street, but I don't have time to go into any detail. You can see originally that the clean lines, and there was no porch, they're just picket fences. And then later on, somebody got the idea that it would be nice to enclose the whole bottom portion of it with asbestos shingles and put in screens. I thought we should go back to the porch with the pickets, and that's what we did. And then we also made some improvements between the houses with new mudrooms. So that's how it appears now. Gradually, the Mill Village moved toward a community of predominantly home ownership. When rented homes became vacant, we further upgraded them before sale, put in central air conditioning and other improvements. The first houses sold in 1988, and here are some before and after pictures. And here is after restoration and improvements, and that shows the bracketed cornices on these Victorian era frame houses. And that's the back side of Long Brick Road before we made the improvements. That's it after we made the improvements. And this is a house Lisa Jensen Wingate lived in at one time before rehab renovation. And it was one of those mail order houses. So here's the next one showing it after the improvements. And this is what's called Dutch Hotel before it was rehab. And that's what it looked like after we completed it and as it is now. Here's the church with asbestos shingles we removed. Here it is after the new steeple went into place. And this is the old community hall. The guts of that building go back to before the Civil War. There is a new addition, though, which was probably built about 1938. Here is a residential infill. In addition to the work that we're doing, we also have other areas where we could put in new housing, and these are all cluster homes. And here's the mill before it was rehab. We didn't have anything to do with the mill. It was Southern Management, but they bought it, and they did a first-class job in renovating and improving and converting it into upscale loft apartments. What I would like to do briefly here is talk a little bit about the George Ellicott House. Now, the problem with the George Ellicott House, it was damaged by the flood in 1972, Agnes, and then it was further damaged in 1975. The owners of the property were getting kind of nervous that if you're going to have a 100-year flood every 3 years, that's not so what they were planning on demolishing it. So a group of us went down to talk to Sam Rogers Jr., who was a wonderful man running the flour mill where the Ellicotts had originally had their flour mill, and he agreed not to demolish the building. He would also give us the lot across the road that was out of the floodplain for us to put it there. So after numerous years and a lot of struggle, We got the building pulled across the road on airplane tires. There are historic preservation easements inside and outside the house, and that house should be good for another couple hundred years, or who knows. So Oella is a step back into history. It is the story of the early beginnings of our industrial society. It is the work of skilled craftsmen who built this picturesque community of log, stone, brick, and frame homes. Oella is wooded hills and rushing water plunging over the river rapids. The renaissance of this historic and scenic land continues. We look forward to an exciting future for Oella's past. Thank you all very much.